As we get closer to early access, or a new beta test, the website has been updated with new hero information, buffs, nerfs, etc., and lots to talk about. Let's do this! Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Hollywood here with another Godforge video. On today's video, we're going to be talking about the new website that's been uploaded and some hero changes, specifically stuff to do with aura and leader bonuses. We're also going to be talking about boss design for the dungeons, and we're also going to be talking about quests, achievements, and missions, as well as thoughts about a possible 10th faction. All this up ahead in today's Godforge video. So on the weekend, I was having a discussion with the Godforge community about some of the changes to the heroes. One of the ones I mentioned was Quetz and his nerf. And some of the feedback I was hearing, that some were saying that it wasn't really a nerf, it was more kind of a rebalance. And lots of people chimed in on this. Some thought it was a nerf, some thought it was just a rebalance. And one of the things I thought was, well, some of the things aren't too big, but there is one thing that is pretty massive about the changes to Quetzalcoatl. So I'll show you what that is here. This is the old kit for Quetzalcoatl before the changes went live on the updated website. And one of the biggest changes here was to this leader bonus, his aura. So before the new changes, Quetzalcoatl had a 21% speed bonus in all battles. He had an all battle speed aura. They call it a leader bonus. I don't think they've officially called it an aura in Godforge. I think that's more of a raid thing, but in this game it's listed as a leader bonus. So let's take a look at the changes on the website here. If we go and take a look at Quetzalcoatl's kit, we can see that his A2 has been changed slightly, initiative up and accuracy up. This is a change from the previous kit, which was attack up, sharpen up. So now it's a initiative up and an accuracy up. But something else we can take a look at here is that we notice his leader bonus is now a 24% speed in dungeon battles. And here's my thoughts on this, and this is one of the reasons I think this is a pretty big deal. Now, Simon did a video recently and he mentioned the top 5 selected heroes, and I don't have an image of that, but the number 3 out of the top 5 was Quetzalcoatl. And I believe that one of the reasons that he was high on the list as a big pick was because of his 21% in all battle speed aura, and this is changed now to 24% speed in dungeon battles. Now what this does is this changes Quetzalcoatl to a more specific champion, and instead of being a more all-round champion that you can use this champion in every area of the game, now he's a little more specific to dungeons. Now, you don't have to specifically use him as a leader, you can use anyone as a leader. So if you're using champions in arena, you can definitely use other champions for a speed aura or leader bonus. Now, I'm going to get into some numbers about this here in just a second, but here's one of the reasons that I think this is a big deal and a big change, and something the devs may want to consider before this game goes live, and here's why. Now, in a game like Raid Shadow Legends, for example, on my own account, I'll give you an example of ratio of heroes and heroes with a speed bonus or speed aura, leader bonus. So personally on my own account, I have about 75 or 80-ish. I have a couple of duplicates and a couple of legendaries that aren't really worth building, but out of the 75 to roughly 80 legendaries that I have, including one mythical, I have 20 of those champions that have a speed aura. Out of those champions that have a speed aura, 13 of those have an all battle speed aura. 6 of those have a speed aura in arena, and only one of those heroes, Lady Kimmy, has a very specific speed aura in Doom Tower. One of the interesting things of note of that is that Lady Kimmy was added to the Raid Heroes list years later as a specific champion with a specific speed aura for Doom Tower. And all the other champions are pretty generic, either speed in all battles or speed in arena. So what we have here listed on the Raven Pyros website is the 5 legendary heroes in the game of Godforge now, out of over 50 legendary heroes that have a speed aura in all battles. So if you take a look at this image here from the Raven Pyros website, you'll see Aphrodite, Belobog, Marduk, Metzli, and Sun Wukong. So out of these 5 heroes that have an all battle speed aura, 3 of those heroes are eternal heroes, so they are much harder to get. So the only 2 heroes that are not eternal champions that have an all battle speed aura are Metzli and Sun Wukong. 2 different playstyles here. So Metzli is a support invoker. She's a healer, a reviver, a debuffer, and this is kind of a champion that was like Quetzalcoatl before Quetzalcoatl's nerf. Quetzalcoatl had an all battle speed aura. Even before that nerf, there were only 2 non-eternal invokers that had a all battle speed aura. So that would have been Metzli and Quetzalcoatl. Sun Wukong obviously is a DPS character, a damage dealing type character. Sun Wukong has an all battle speed aura of 24% in all battles. This brings up an interesting consideration for future meta in Arena. So as I mentioned, my account on Raid Shadow Legends, I have 75 to 80-ish legendary heroes that are pretty much useful and relatively useful to use. Out of those, 20 of those have a speed aura. So that's over 25% or over a quarter of the champions I have, legendary champions that I have a speed aura. Currently there are listed on the website 56 legendary heroes, and out of those 56 legendary heroes, 5 of them have a speed aura or all battle speed aura. So these are the champions that are going to be mostly used in arena, likely for their speed aura, and that's going to create an interesting dynamic for meta. I'll just scroll down a little bit here and we'll see the other additional champions that have an all battle speed aura in the game right now. So for other champions that have an all battle speed aura right now, we have the Epic Ryujin, who is an eternal epic, and we have Isolde, who is a rare champion that we'll be able to get from campaign. And one of the things I think is that this will make Solde a very meta champion to use in arena if we're using speed auras in arena. Now I imagine if this game is going to be similar to Raid, and in a lot of ways it does seem to be, that a speed aura in arena is going to be incredibly useful. Now the other aura that I think could be a big deal in arena is the initiative aura. Let's take a look at that here. So currently we have 6 champions in the game of over 200 with an initiative aura. Out of these 6 champions, there are only 4 of the 9 factions represented, and only 4 of them are legendary. So when it comes to champions that have the initiative in all battles aura, you have 6 champions, 4 legendaries, 2 epics. You have 2 legendaries from the Izumu faction. You have 2 champions from the Tian faction. You have 1 champion from the Vryraj faction, and you have 1 champion from the Iker faction. So if you don't use a speed aura in arena, one of the options is to use a initiative aura with these champions here. So this is why one of the reasons I find a change to Quetzalcoatl quite interesting, right? Because using my raid account as an example, with the 75 to 80-ish champions that I have, and 20 of those have a speed aura, that makes 25% of the champions, or around 25% of the champions that I have, legendary champions that I use on my raid account, have a speed aura. If we were to use the same sort of math in Godforge to have a speed aura, you would probably want about 14 champions with a speed aura. Now we have 9 factions, and we have a couple of factions that don't have a speed aura at all. We have the Aru and the Asgardian champions that don't have a speed aura. If you were to use a 25% ratio, that would have a speed aura like they do in Raid, you would probably have about 2 of these champions that have a speed aura and 1 of these legendaries that have a speed aura. So my concern here is that when you only have 5 champions in the game with a speed aura and 3 of those champions are eternal, it's going to create an interesting meta, to say the least, for Arena. So you might be asking yourself, well, what about the speed aura in Arena? Do we have any speed aura in Arena champions? And yes, we have 2 of those. So we do have Vivian, who has a leader bonus of 28% speed in Arena, which is one of the reasons she's been also a top 5 pick in the picks on the Godforge quests minigame. And we also have Hades, who is a disruptor. He's a cunning disruptor from the Olympus faction, and he has a 25% speed in arena battles. And I also kind of find it pretty interesting that this guy hasn't been selected more or isn't rated higher, with being one of the only 2 champions in the game that has a speed aura in arena. His kit looks pretty good too. It's quite a disruptive kit, being a disruptor. So you can take a look at his kit here. It's quite a cool kit, and he's going to be very disruptive for sure. I think he's also got to be a meta champion, especially in arena. So when we go over here and take a look at Quetzalcoatl again, one of my biggest concerns about his changes wasn't really the Light of Knowledge change, because those are a couple of buffs and we can pretty much get those buffs from anyone else in the team. That's not a real huge deal. My biggest concern with his changes was the 21% speed aura in all battles changed to 24% speed in dungeon battles only. So this is going to make him a more niche champion, and the reason I have a concern with this is because, especially in the early game, we're going to want to focus on only a handful of characters that we're going to want to build. And here's something that's an interesting consideration with this change to Quetzalcoatl. If we go over here in the same faction, the Omeocan, and we take a look at Metzli here. Metzli is also an invoker, and she's got a very good kit here. She's got a restore destroyed HP on her basic. She's got a cleanse on her A2, her core. And on her ultimate, she's got a revive all allies. And she's got a 20% speed aura in all battles, which I think makes her a very useful all-round champion. She's got a cleanse, she's got a heal, she's got a revive, and she's got a speed aura in all battles. I think this is going to really make her one of the top considerations. For me, this probably puts her in the top 5 champions, because she does everything as an invoker. You don't have to bring a second champion now to do the same thing she can do. She does a cleanse, she does a heal, she does a revive, and she brings a speed aura in all battles. So if you build Metzli out, you can be comfortable knowing that you've built a good character early that you can use in every area of the game. And when you're using all your resources to build characters, you're not going to want to build 2 or 3 invokers off the hop. You're probably going to want to put most of your resources into 1 invoker. So this is the reason that I think maybe they want to give some extra consideration to changing Quetzalcoatl's speed aura leader bonus. I think if we were 2 years into the game and we had 500 champions, this wouldn't be such a big deal. But early on, when we start off our accounts, we're going to want some of these more all battles auras to give ourselves some more useful all-round champions. And not only do I think Quetzalcoatl's leader bonus should be changed back to the 21% in all battles, I think we should have half a dozen or more other heroes that have an all battle speed aura. And the reason for this is because if we only have 2 champions that aren't eternal champions that have an all battle speed aura, it's going to create this real bottleneck meta, especially in arena. And everyone who has these 2 champions, Metzli and Sun Wukong, are going to dominate arena. And if they have 2 of those champions, let's say they have Metzli and Sun Wukong, or Metzli and Aphrodite, or Sun Wukong and Vivian. If they have 2 of these champions that bring a speed aura, and one of them gets banned, if they use the same format they use in Raid Shadow Legends, it's going to create quite a dominant meta and a bottleneck of the people who have these speed aura champions, especially if there are people who are whales in the game and outspend the free-to-play community, which is typical anyway in any game. You're going to get people that are going to spend on the game to get these couple of champions. Personally, I think the initiative and the speed aura bonus are going to be probably the biggest bonuses you can get in live arena. And a big consideration with changing a kit from an all battle speed aura to a speed aura in dungeons is that it makes someone consider, do they really want to build out this champion early on in the game? Do they want to pick this champion in the mini game? Do they want to spend a lot of the resources building out this champ when they can build a champion like Metzli, who they can use in every area of the game? Now, personally, if I had an opportunity to pick between the two, I may pick Metzli because Metzli's got an all-around kit. He does have which is interesting, he does have an increased turn meter of all allies by 20%, which is something that is very useful in live arena. But without a live arena aura, you're going to be depending on someone else to bring a live arena speed aura to your roster. Now, obviously, you can use this champion in live arena, and he does bring these good bonuses in live arena, like the turn meter of all allies by 20%. But his aura is not going to be useful in live arena, so you're going to still have to bring someone to live arena that does have a speed aura or maybe an initiative aura. Those are probably going to be the two most useful auras in live arena, I would imagine. So to wrap it up, that's my thoughts on the Quetzalcoatl change with the aura or speed bonus, leader bonus. And I think it's worth some consideration from the devs to adjust that back to the way it was before, and also adding or changing some other heroes to having a speed lead bonus to prevent some of the bottleneck that's going to happen with people trying to select a couple of heroes. So moving on to my second topic of the day, I have here dungeon battles and boss design. This right here is one of the cavern dungeon bosses that I did on Alpha 3, and the game, as a disclaimer, is changed now from this. It's different, but this was one of the teams I was using to fight the bosses in Alpha 3. This was floor 90 of the caverns in Alpha 3. You can see I got Heimdall here, Shamash, Anubis, Achilles, and Quetzalcoatl. Building your bosses and boss strategies with tactics in mind over DPS and gear checks. DPS and gear checks is something I think is typically a pretty lazy design if you're doing just DPS and gear checks, because it is an artificial gate that holds the player back by getting certain gear, grinding gear, instead of using good strategies and building teams out properly. So I always prefer boss encounters that make you play an encounter to a good strategy over just a DPS and gear check. The other negative to building a boss with just a straight DPS and gear check is that once you've beaten that DPS and gear check once, that boss is now obsolete. You can beat it every time, right? So the one good thing about creating a boss encounter with strategy and tactics in mind is that when you go in every single time, you have to play the tactics and strategy. You have to build your team correctly, and you have to play them. It makes it a lot more interesting. A few of the bosses in Raid Shadow Legends that I think are designed with good tactics and strategy involved are bosses like Amius, Chimera, Dark Fae. I know Amius isn't a very popular boss, but he is a boss that you have to go in there with specific tactics in mind. You can't simply auto that boss or zerg that boss down with good damage. You have to bring in certain tactics every time you play that boss. And once you beat that boss once, he's not a given every time you're going to beat him. You still have to try and use those same tactics and strategies again to beat him. So these are the kind of boss designs I think are done well. So I would definitely prefer those kind of designs over a strict DPS and gear check. Those are always more fun. And then once you've beaten that boss, it makes the boss playable again, because I know again in Raid Shadow Legends, having bosses or certain tactics, let's say a boss like Fire Knight, I still bring Cold Heart to the Fire Knight, and Cold Heart is a rare champion. I still bring Demitha and Farrakhan the Fat to the clan boss, even though they're epic champions. And I do that because they're built well, and you can use certain strategies on that boss that allow you to do that boss with a certain strategy. and it keeps champions like rares and epics more relevant when you can use them with certain strategies on bosses. Moving on to mission, quests, and achievements. I'm not sure if this is something that's been mentioned in a recent Godforge video with one of the Fateless crew. Now this here behind me, this is all footage from the Alpha 3, so just a little disclaimer here that this here that's being shown behind me right now is footage that I recorded during Alpha 3. Just some different hero kits. Now these have all changed, or some of them have changed. Anyway, these are some of the heroes that I was using during Alpha 3. And all of these are pretty good champions. Actually got a pretty good roster here in Alpha 3. These are some pretty excellent champions that I was using on Alpha 3. So one of the things I was thinking about with your missions, your campaign, and your achievements, I'm kind of hoping there is going to be a sort of Arbiter and Marius type mission type achievement for Godforge. I'm not sure if there's a champion that's been chosen already for a missions track. If I had a recommendation, I think a perfect champion for that would be Zeus. I think Zeus is one of those kind of champions that every player should be able to have and should be able to get, as he is the king of the gods. So I think having Zeus locked behind a missions track would make the most sense. It would also give players something to shoot for, so I'm not sure who's been chosen for that, for a missions track, but that would be interesting to find out if that's going to be happening. And one of my final thoughts on today's video is considerations for a future 10th faction. I think that, and I mentioned this in one of my last videos here, that having a Wanderers or a Misfits faction, a sort of potpourri faction for heroes that don't fit into the current faction lineup. I think this is especially going to be useful in events like Halloween and Christmas coming up. Like you may want to have a Frankenstein or a Dr. Jekyll or a Saint Nick or a Krampus or a Jack Frost for Christmas. So just for holidays and events like that alone, and on Valentine's Day, you're going to want to have a Cupid or something like that, which would make sense. Obviously, Cupid will fit into the current Olympus faction. But to do any sort of IPs or collaboration down the road, I think that they're going to want to make a 10th faction within the next couple of years for sure. Maybe by the first anniversary, they're going to want to add a 10th faction. I think that they're going to want to be able to do this because they're going to be limited a little bit by who they can add to the game by their 9 current factions. Now, I know they do have a 2-year roadmap planned, but a 10th faction I think is something worth considering, and worth considering fairly early. So this seems like a pretty good place to leave it here with Quetzalcoatl, one of the champions that I talked about quite a bit today with his nerf. And we'll see how that plays out here in the early access or a second beta coming here, perhaps. I guess we'll see. For all those who are new to the channel, thank you for stopping by. It's going to be a very exciting first few months here when the game launches. And I can't wait to see all of you again on my future Godforge videos. So until next time, take care everyone.